So as you know, yesterday, Season 15 finally arrived. New season means new changes. Well, only for the weapons. For some reason there was no legend changes, but there was a lot of weapon changes coming your way. So today I've got the best weapons to be using in Apex Legends Season 15, and these are my predictions to what will be the best. If you don't know what tier list is, it's a way of ranking things. So today we're going to be ranking the best weapons in Apex Legends Season 15. We'll start off at D tier and make our way up to S tier, D tier being the worst and S being the best. Just before we start, if you want a video edited by me, I'll have my Fiverr account linked in the description down below. That is for anyone who is a YouTuber, mainly in the gaming area. If you do like the videos you see in the background, then make sure you go and contact me on there. So starting us off in detail will be the Mozambique and the P2020. Now these weapons are what I like to call the starter weapons. These are the weapons that you pick up at this beginning of the game, and they're not meant for anything other than that. They're meant for the start of the game, not the end of the game. They're mainly there to upgrade. So you go from a P20 to an alternator to an R99 to an R301, that kind of thing. So you don't stick with these weapons, they're just there to upgrade and also balance out the pool table. If every single weapon in the game was OP or just genuinely good, then there will be no RNG to the game, there will be no battle royale feeling to it. It'll be more of a COD style game. You need these bad weapons in the game to keep the meta rotating. So that's why these weapons are always down in D tier, because they're not meant to be used in a very good way, especially that the hammer point hop-up has been removed. So these base weapons cannot be upgraded. These are just the P2020 and the Mozambique. There's nothing else you can get from these weapons. So that's why they're down in D tier. Moving us up to C tier, now we have the charge rifle, the devotion, the longbow, the alternator, and the 30-30 repeater. The only weapon in this tier that kind of got a change was the devotion. So the change that happened to the devotion was when the turbocharger is equipped, damage is reduced by 1. That is the only thing that's really been reduced. The only other weapon I would talk about in this tier would be the alternator. For me, the alternator really wasn't that good last season, and I don't think it's going to change this season either. There are just some other SMGs in the game. Well, every single other SMG in the game is just better than the alternator. Now, I will give the alternator some credit. It has some benefits that the other weapons don't. So the alternator is a slower firing SMG compared to the other ones, which allows you to readjust your aim if you're missing some of your shots. So realistically, this weapon is actually a pretty decent SMG if your aim isn't the best. But obviously the weapons that are the best are going to take more skill to use. So if you're using stuff like the R99, that takes more recoil control than the alternator does. And the R99 is a much faster firing weapon, so it takes more aim to actually hit the consecutive shots. But like I said before, the alternator's fire rate is much slower, so it's easier to hit your shots. So there is good reasons to use this weapon, but it just isn't one of the better ones in the game. So moving up to B tier now, we have the Hemlock, the Eva 8, the L-Star, the Prowler, the G7 Scout, the Havoc, and the Sentinel. So there's a few changes within this tier which I'll talk about now. So again, with the Havoc, just like the Devotion, when the turbocharger is equipped, the damage is reduced by 1. The double tap is now increased to legendary, so obviously that could go on the Eva 8 and the G7 Scout. And the recoil is improved for the burst fire of the Scout. So when you have the Scout and you equip the double tap, the recoil is much easier to control than it was before. When it comes to the L-Star, there's been a reduced recoil at the beginning of the recoil pattern, so it's easier to control the recoil off the rip as soon as you start shooting it, and the stow animations adjusted to match better timings. So realistically for the L-Star, it's just a little bit easier to control than it was before. Now, unfortunate for the Hemlock, the boosted loader has now been removed too. So that's all the changes within this tier, but the weapon I want to talk about is actually the Eva 8. Now the Eva 8 is down in B tier because I don't really like to have more than one type of weapon in each tier. So I'm not going to have the Mastiff, the Eva 8 and the Peacekeeper all in one tier, so I like to separate them. So the Mozambique is a shotgun and that's down in D tier because it's the worst shotgun. The P2020 is down in D tier because it's the worst pistol. So for me, the Eva 8 is the worst shotgun in the game. Well, obviously apart from the Mozambique. The Peacekeeper has some changes and the Mastiff has some changes, and we'll get onto those later. But those changes aren't significant enough for the Eva 8 to move up for me. I don't think the Eva 8 is on any sort of level compared to the Peacekeeper, and especially not the Mastiff now it's floor loot. So for me, that's the reason why it's down in beta. Now the Prowler, again, I wouldn't say it's the best SMG, but it's certainly up there. The burst control is pretty easy to control, especially if you're on controller. This weapon is amazing on controller, but in the grand schemes of things, this isn't the best SMG in the game, but it certainly isn't the worst. I don't think it deserves C tier. It could possibly deserve A tier, and I will allow that. But for me, I think it's B tier, slap bang in the middle, very good to use, and it's not bad whatsoever. That's why it's staying in B tier. Now, the G7 is obviously sort of kind of new to the floor loot. It came back last season, and I must say, it was just okay. I really didn't see a need to pick up this weapon. Now, obviously, with the double tap coming in and the reduced recoil on the G7 when using the double tap, that might put it up on the list, but the double tap is now legendary rarity anyway, so it's going to be a little bit harder to find. But it could move up to A tier, and I'll allow that like I did with the Prowler, but I think B tier is perfect. B tier is not a bad tier at all. It just means like mid weapons. They are good to use. Like, you can use them, but I wouldn't say they are meta. The meta weapons are A tier and S tier. So B, I think they're not meta, but still very, very good to use. I also forgot to say, for the Sentinel, you can recharge the Sentinel before the previous charge is expired. So if you charge up your Sentinel and it's halfway through and you want to charge it up again, that's exactly what you can do. It literally says what it says on the tin. But I wouldn't actually say that increases the weapon at all. I think the weapon itself stays the same. It's a nice feature to have, but I don't think it really affects the weapon overall. So I do think that's about it for B tier. So because of that, I'm going to move up to A tier now, and A tier and S tier, as always, are the best weapons in the game. I think you need to be using at least one of these weapons within your loadout at all times, because these are what I predict are going to be the meta weapons this season. So straight into it, in A tier, we have the Peacekeeper, the R301, the Flatline, the Triple Take, and finally the Volt SMG. So some of the changes that have been made in this tier are the Volt SMG has a reduced projectile speed and an increased projectile gravity. The Triple Take also got a change where the rate of fire is increased from 1.2 to 1.35, and the choke charge time has been reduced from 1.1 to 0.5. So the sniper shoots much quicker, and the choke time, which allows for more damage, is reduced too. So it shoots quicker and technically does more damage too. So I really think this weapon is actually going to be pretty decent this season. For the Peacekeeper, the projectile growth has been reduced, but a downside to the Peacekeeper is that the kinetic feeder has now been removed. So the reason why the Peacekeeper is up here is because it is now in the crafting rotation. So for me, I do believe that weapons are actually increased in like value, let's say, when they are put into the crafting rotation, because you are guaranteed to get that weapon every single game if you get the crafting materials, which is pretty easy to get. Sometimes you may want a Peacekeeper, and if it wasn't in the crafting rotation, you may not find the Peacekeeper for games. It can happen. You may not find the weapon you want for games at a time, but when they're in the crafting rotation, you are guaranteed them every single game. So for me, the rarity, or the value even, not the rarity, goes up. So for me, that's why the Peacekeeper is better than the either 8, and so is in A tier, and could possibly go up to S tier. So the Volt SMG is also incredible. The recoil is easy to control, the fire rate's pretty decent, and the overall mag size is very, very good too. So for that reason, I think it is an A tier, but I do not believe it is the very best SMG in the game. And I'm pretty sure you would know what weapon that is if you've been paying attention. The R301 and the Flatline have both been granted the Anvil receiver again, which is absolutely amazing. These two ARs are the best ARs in the game. They're absolute beams. Both of them, fire rate pretty decent, mag size pretty decent too, as well as the overall damage as well. So that's why they're sitting in A tier. Just to recap on A tier again, we have the Peacekeeper, the R301, the Flatline, the Triple Take, and finally the Volt SMG. So moving up to S tier now, and the best weapon in the games, I would say, is the Spitfire, the R99, the Mastiff, the Car SMG, and finally the Wingman. Now the only weapon I'm going to talk about, or the only weapons I'm going to talk about in this tier, are the ones with the changes, and that is the R99 and the Mastiff shotgun. So the R99 has an increased blue magazine size, which used to be 24 and is now 25, and the purple magazine used to be 27 and it's now 28. So the R99 has been granted one more bullet, but that one bullet is going to be an absolute game changer, and don't think I'm over exaggerating here. The weapon used to have this. The weapon used to have the mag size of 28 in the purple magazine, but was removed because of how OP it was. Now it's back. I think the R99 is going to be the best SMG in the game now. One bullet doesn't sound like a lot, but if your aim is good, one more bullet is one extra kill basically. This weapon is going to be on top of its game and the best it has been for a very long time. Now, the Massive obviously has been taken out of the care package back on floor loot, so there's been quite a few changes. So here we go. The ammo capacity has been increased from 4 to 5, so you have more shots. You have a widened blast pattern, so basically when you shoot, the area of damage is much wider than it was before, so if you're up close, you're going to be hitting a lot of pellets, and so it should be one shots anyway. The damage per pellet has been reduced from 14 to 11, so it does a little bit less damage, but the widened the blast pattern I think makes up for that. The projectile growth has also been reduced, much like the Peacekeeper, and a reload can be cancelled with ADS, so you don't have to stick through the whole reload animation. So that was the tier list for the best weapons in Apex Legends Season 15. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, there is also the best Legends tier list in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment down below too. In my pinned comment will also be my Fiverr. If you want a video made for you by me, then make sure you hit me up over there. So yeah, thank you guys so much for support recently. Once again, it's been my pleasure, and until next time, keep dominating Legends.